So this stage is probably going to require more visits because this stage is enormous. Now I am aware that there have been versions of this, but again, I'm not factoring that in when I'm doing any of this, so... Also, Incorpus Plaza. One thing you also gotta note, the background will also have a lot of objects, even if, for example, something is floating, like that red thing over there, it could be considered a separate thing. The floaties could even be considered a part of the jellies. Just saying. Nothing in there. As expected. Now, I believe the middle point of this stage is, like, along here. So, I'm just gonna keep going until I notice something. There are sometimes strange exceptions to this. This stage internally, I believe, is referred to as Nakasu. It's one of those weird ones where it sounds Japanesey, but there's no real discernible thing about it. From my perspective, at least. Because Flutter Heights is similar. It's called Joheki internally, which also sounds Japanese. But I don't know if it means anything. The glasses might be separate, but I wouldn't count them out being in the actual thing. Yeah, I'm gonna have to visit the stage multiple times. The sponge is very obviously separate. Although, do be warned, getting sponges to work is a pain in the butt. I assume there's probably multiple shapes of sponges. It's like a what? How big is a sponge? Very big. At full size. Obviously. So. Yeah, the floating things, those little balls in the water, they could also be separate objects since they're floating. Anything animated, such as that, is typically referred to as an LFT. I don't know if I can really define that in this place as often, but it's pretty often seen in Splatoon's levels, where if there's a moving part, it will be an LFT, a separate object entirely. So, oh, lemon. Okay, so... By the way, fun fact, that set over there, the little like stage up there, that looks parts of it look very similar to the stage that Off the Hook uses in the Splatfest Plaza. Fun fact, but it will very obviously be a part of the stage. It won't be part of that because that would be too big and would be ridiculous to put in. But yeah, that little floating thing, like, even if it's so small that all it's doing is floating, it could be considered separate. So please be aware of that. Does this react to anything? Is this dynamic? Okay. That could be part of the stage then. But it could also be separate. It really depends, because sometimes there have been instances where they are separate objects. And it's not particularly obvious or easy to use the camera through them or something. By the way, this screen. I don't think this screen will be truly visible in some sense. The animation that's playing right now, animations in Splatoon are handled very strangely. Every single frame of the animation is its own individual texture, and it rolls through them. Every screen in Splatoon is handled like this. The square, even Marina's laptop, which is why I don't get why people constantly ask for hairstyles when it means that they would have to reroute that laptop and make it bigger and bigger each time. Now, very obviously, I'll go back up there, but I'll just go back down here. Get that Towser thing. Now, I am seeing a couple of general no, sorry, that was a misstep. I am seeing a couple of general boxes. Get out of Arowana Mall, I don't need to be here. I am seeing a couple of general boxes throughout the stage. Differently sized ones. Generally just go by the amount of squares you see. Like this is a 2 square. Do you notice the line here in between them? That's how I take it. Like 2 squares, that's what you're supposed to see. There's one in the center. I swear I pressed jump there. I must have been too late. But this one would obviously be bigger. It looks like a 4 square one. And they are pretty big in comparison to the Inklings and Octolings. I mean, look at this. Holy. Like, wow. Compare with the sticker, I guess, if you need to. And of course, like, if a Splatfest is about to happen, of course they will appear on these screens too. But that will not obviously be... Like, this one here with the strange presents stuff and it's got this whole advertisement thing. That will probably be in the stages files as, like, a bunch of textures, like, labeled with the individual frame number, like 1 through to, like, 50 or something. Splatfest will not show because it's a RAM edition. It's not going to... They're not permanent, so you wouldn't see them if you were looking at the files. In the background, I don't think there's anything else. I mean, the only time I've played the stage in a turf war, mind you, is, The only time I've played the stage in a turf war is, Splatfest. I have looked at the stage otherwise, but it would be it's very difficult because the stage is enormous. So yeah, likely it's all of these water props that are floating that would be considered separate. Even they might not be labeled with the stage's name, but they are relevant to that stage. Like, for example, to give an example, not in this stage, but in like another stage, Kelp Dome. Kelp Dome has an object called OBJ Tree Orange. You would have no idea it relates to Kelp Dome, but it does. In Splatoon 1 at least, it's the trees that have the oranges in them that you can interact with. Yeah, they're not regular trees because they have orange fruit in them. I'm going to take a look at the insides in case there's anything else to look for. Essentially, this is like the Mahi resort of this game. Mahi Resort was more square than this. Oh, okay. One thing that seriously irks me in this stage, though, is the amount of stuff that is covered by uninkable walls, which honestly triggers the hell out of me. I love using walls. But yeah, even those balloon things, they could just be called balloons for all I know. That could be all that is to the stage, and all said and done then. Not much else. The background would just be the background. Oh, something to note. I am noticing something. Hold on. Let me walk over to them. Which I bet people haven't really noticed. In the center of the stage, which could be anywhere to around here, I suppose, or even below, they spawn numerous amounts of plant props because, as you can see, they're blowing in the wind. Now, that doesn't seem like a gigantic task, but notice those trees in the back, they are not moving, whereas these ones are. These ones would be in, like, the center of the map, and you would have to duplicate. So, for example, there's one of these on each side. You would have to duplicate this little one over there too, if you were trying to duplicate it or something. Same thing too with these other two trees here, because they're blowing. Is there anything else like that in this stage? Yep, see that one up there? It's just not moving. Those ones in the background there, not moving. These ones, moving. Therefore, they are in the middle. They can't separate them, but they will separate them in the model of the stage. It's a bit difficult to explain. If you want an example from Splatoon 1 that did this, Spliff and Depot did this very thing with the trees in the background. Technically, they're LFTs that aren't really LFTs, so therefore they're separate and put in the middle. Now, that might not be here. That could be like, I don't know, it could be like over here. But you really gotta keep that in mind. And I bet most haven't, because it's not really totally noticeable. Which, I wouldn't be surprised if, say, the version of Albacore Hotel that's on the SFM workshop completely ignored the trees, because I have a skate park beta on DeviantArt for a link, and Skatepark also had this problem, and eventually we noticed that there were a whole bunch of plants in the middle, and I had to use a top-down screenshot to find out where their locations were. Stuff like those trees in the background will be just part of the mesh, and will be in their original position, because they don't move. These ones move, therefore they will be part of the center, wherever the center is. Now that might not be the actual center of the stage. It could be wherever the origin point lands. Skatepark had this very issue when I had to place in Blender these. In fact, it was actually this palm tree, and I think this one. There was a fourth plant, I suppose, but it's not here. I had to place those plants all around Skatepark using only a top-down screenshot of where the plants are supposed to be. But obviously, they were all in the center, so I had no idea where that they were even there in the first place. And that's not something you should be missing, especially considering, the devs go to this effort to put, the trees to blow in the wind. I mean, sparingly, considering that these ones and all the other ones don't. I don't like pointing to specifics in the background, which is called internally the DV, because that is more of a singular world and I've said this before, Splatoon 2 is leveraging most of its world design on the DV instead of the actual stages themselves because of slope design like this. It makes me hard for me to tell if it's at an actual location or not. But these trees are like different from those trees, and like these buildings are different from these buildings. The DV is doing most of the heavy lifting in this game, in making them feel real. Oh, and also, just for a brief moment, these will just be given some basic Miiverse texture. Ignore them. I don't think you can probably just keep the screens, but I don't think there'll be anything much to them. Anyway, let's just do some final checks because I did miss the plants and I had to go for an explanation for them. So actually, same thing with these things up here. If these things up here are also in the center of the stage, like, then you would have to look up, I suppose, for, you know, where their locations are. Just where they basically connect to. There seem to be only 4 of them. So those come out from the same point and go to something up there. Like, there's a wire up there that isn't moving, so I don't expect that one to be in the center, but like that one that is dangling in the wind, I expect that to also be in the center like the plants are. Because the flags in Camp Triggerfish also did the same. Because if you just watch them for a bit, they are dangling, and any movement typically ends up in the center. Because they're technically considered separate because they're moving. Splatoon 1 did this, and the sequel will likely follow suit. I haven't seen anything that proves me otherwise in other areas of Splatoon where moving objects count as separate, even in this game. But yeah, I don't think there's anything else to it. The stage is fairly large. Also, just pay attention to what really the skybox is. I mean, this could be different from Inkopolis Plaza, Square, obviously, and Plaza, no crud. But yeah, just keep that in mind, because they certainly do have a specific feel with these kinds of things, especially since this place canonically is supposed to be like super high up. In 20 seconds, let's just go back and show, like, yeah, that's kind of why. Also, that would just be low poly DV, by the way. Oh, the cars would also be in the center. Maybe, maybe they would be like DV car truck group. Stages like Urchin and Skate Park had. I had to think for a second. Skate Park, Urchin, and Arowana had and have things like that with the things, because like that would just be part of the bus group, and that would like, yeah, they seem to be the same amount of vehicles as any other. It's just cars, buses, trucks, and other vehicles in case they have a distinction. But because they're moving, they are considered different. Now, like, it depends. It's generally an object moving, not stuff like, you know, the water, because that's just water. It would just be flat. It doesn't really move as an object. Exception would be the sea in Salmon Run, and that's already given an LFT notifier, so, or identifier, I guess. Because, yeah, those aren't moving. Are there any other floating objects in the water? That isn't the obvious. Yeah, I think those giant floaty things would definitely be LFTs because of their floatiness, and the bowlings obviously, but not those umbrella platforms because they're just not moving. Yeah, I don't think there's anything else really to say. I've explored really every facet of this place. Enjoy my foot phasing through glass, I guess? Just a side note, glass is rendered really strangely in Splatoon, in the sense, like, glass doesn't have a texture in the way you'd expect a texture to have it, like anything really, except the glass has a texture. So, yeah, kind of just be aware of that. Anyway, that's really it for Albacore. I feel like I couldn't go any further into what I went through for it. So, see you for the next one, I guess.